Do you think you know Herschel Walker?
Touchdown, Georgia.
Well, think again. Listen to what his ex-wife had to say about him.
His eyes would become very evil. The guns and knives. I got into a few choking things with him. The first time he held the gun to my head, he held the gun to my temple and said he was going to blow my brains out.
So that is a new ad from the Republican Accountability PAC, trying once again to get through to the voters of Georgia that Herschel Walker, there's some significant issues with him. The idea of him holding a position of incredible political power, considering the many things that he has said and done, both in private and in public. And while they point out one particular case of him threatening, an intimate partner with lethal violence, not the only one. So let's see. Cindy DeAngelis went on to say unequivocally that he was going to shoot my sister and her boyfriend in the head. Let's see. Police responded to a dispute in 2001 where they had to take cover outside of his house, and then said that they were going to have his address be a caution address since he has violent tendencies and has talked about having a shootout with police. So threatening to shoot a wife, threatening to shoot her sister and her husband, threatening to shoot the police, or at least imagining shooting them. There have been many other instances in which he has made threats of violence, including lethal violence against multiple people in multiple relationships. And look, I guess you can't just accept anyone's word, but this certainly seems like a pattern of violent fantasies and threats over multiple decades. And I guess that that's not a deal breaker necessarily, David, but I really wish that it still was. I feel like there are other Republicans in Georgia that are super conservative, but haven't frequently threatened to murder people.
Well, and speaking of patterns, it is usually the pattern of Democrats not to go to these sort of dark places in terms of attack ads. I think this is a brilliant ad because there's so many people in Georgia who are not paying attention to politics. They only know Herschel Walker as 1980 Heisman Trophy winner, national champion. Oh, he was such a great football player. Yeah, he must be a great guy. Well, they aren't paying attention to some of the stuff that has happened since his football career. And this ad is so effective and so powerful. And credit to the audio engineer behind this ad, where you have the swell and then almost like the click where she talks about him blowing her brains. I mean, it is a gripping ad. And I think it's gonna cause a lot of people to sort of say, well, wait a second, is that Herschel Walker? And am I comfortable with having him with all those problems represent us? And then I think the burden is on Herschel Walker to say, yeah, okay, I've messed up. I've threatened violence. I've been involved in a lot of stuff. I'm a different person now, or whatever he might say. But again, this raises the question. And again, people can have problems in their past and correct them, but you gotta come clean about those problems first.
Yeah, and look, to some extent, he has talked openly about like the time that he was driving to go murder someone, but thankfully Jesus spoke to him in his head. So, which was nice of Jesus because he didn't commit a murder. That was good. Thank you, Jesus, for stepping in at that particular moment. But I think, look, he didn't murder people that we know of in these cases, so that's good. That's the positive. On the other hand, while I agree that people can change, does that mean they should be a senator? Like, I'm not saying he should be locked up because he has frequently fantasized about murdering people, but should he be in a position of supreme political power, choosing Supreme Court justices, deciding whether legislation passes or not, when he has so frequently imagined himself in these situations? I don't know. I think that's an interesting thing for the voters of Georgia to debate. And I think they just have to have the information so that they're at least thinking about that.
And it gets to one of the keys for Democrats is, Herschel Walker is, I think, to the extent you can point him as unstable, that only helps you because the reputation he had was he was the most reliable athlete in Georgia history. He was rock solid in representing Georgia and standing for us on the football field. Well, to the extent you can say, well, wait a second, maybe there's something wrong with him. Maybe he is unstable. Maybe he has tendencies towards violence. If you can put that in there, then you start to have people questioning their perceptions of Herschel Walker. And suddenly they're like, well, wait a second, Raphael Warnock is stable and he's predictable, even if you may not agree with his policies. And then it becomes more of a personality contest where Warnock, who's already ahead, continues to win.
Yeah. Yeah, and at least insofar as my research has shown, Warnock has not frequently threatened to murder people. He hasn't fantasized about engaging in shootouts with the police. None of that sort of stuff, which I consider, I mark that down in the pro column for him as a candidate. Now, that said, I do want to let people know about the current state of the race. We know that nationally things have seemed to have shifted a little bit, especially in like the generic congressional ballot towards the Democrats in recent days. Well, here is the last, let's see, month or so of polls. And Raphael Warnock has been leading in all of the recent polls. One of them has him at +9, but in most of these, I mean, these aren't necessarily the biggest pollsters, and he's only winning by a few points. You would just really hope, David, that he would have a bigger lead considering all of this.
Oh yeah, I mean, I would hope we would live in a country where if somebody has a Republican or Democratic symbol next to their name, that doesn't cause an automatic reaction by people. But unfortunately, there are plenty of people in Georgia and a lot of other states who are gonna say, Herschel Walker, he's not a Democrat. I don't care if he's an axe murderer, I'm voting for him. That's the way politics, particularly on the right, is being played these days. And the just blind allegiance that so many Americans have, the tribal allegiance to their party. And it's frightening in many ways.
100%, yeah. But let's bear in mind, the Roy Moore race was pretty close. And Roy Moore, beyond just these threats, I mean, he was basically like the Matt Gaetz of the 60s. And yet he was very close to getting into office. For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/The Damage Report. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.